Hey everybody, welcome back to D-Town TV, the weekly show for DSLR shooters. My name is Matt Kloskowski.
And I'm Dave Cross.
Dave?
I know, I just jumped right in here.
We have a new co-host. So Scott is out on vacation this week, as you can see, and Dave Cross is here, but it's good to know that you're carrying the torch of black t-shirt.
Yep, and I was planning to hit the table a couple times.
Hit the table a lot, Dave, and anytime you're gonna demo a piece of black equipment, you gotta make sure you hold it. I got black on too, so we'll make sure we hold it up in front of our black shirt. But hey guys, we got a very cool show for you here. We got Larry Becker doing cheap shots in this one. David Zer is in this show as well. We even got Moose Peterson, and you've got some.
I do. I'm going to show a tip, and just to give you a little bit of foreshadowing, I'm going to use this. Ooh. Not to take the photo, but, well, kind of take the photo, but as a kind of a cool thing to see how you can put an iPhone or an iPhone Touch into your photographic workflow. But before we do that, Matt's got a pretty cool tip for you.
I do. It's a tip. We were at Photoshop World last week, and I taught a class on HDR. And the class was the whole thing from start to finish, where we kind of talked in the class a little bit. We went out and did a shoot, and then we came out and everybody processed their photos, and we all walked around and helped everybody out. And what I realized is that a lot of cameras have a feature in them called, I didn't realize this, I knew this before going into the class, of course. There's a feature called auto exposure bracketing, okay? And the best thing to do to see if your camera has it is just look it up in the manual, because you might have it and not even know it. But your camera, when you turn that on, will automatically over and underexpose the photos each time you take a picture, so that you don't have to manually go in there and change the settings. But I found out a couple things in that class. First off, not every camera has auto exposure bracketing. Second off, sometimes if the camera only shoots 3 frames or 5 frames or something like that, sometimes you've got to go in and manually over or underexpose. So I guess the question is, what about if my camera doesn't have auto exposure bracketing? How can you still bracket your photos? So if your camera doesn't, which I've got a D40 here, what you can do is you can kind of just manually do this yourself. So the first thing would be, is you want to set it to aperture priority, because that's what we're always telling people to shoot at, especially if you're bracketing. So you set it to aperture priority, you frame your photo, and you look, let's say I have it set to f8, and I'm getting a shutter speed reading of 125th of a second, okay? Well, just kind of remember that for a second, and then you're gonna go over into manual mode. Once you're in manual mode, you're gonna dial in f8 at 125th of a second. That's your base exposure, okay? Then from there, you're gonna take that picture, then you're gonna go in and you're not gonna change your aperture, because you remember, we're bracketing, we don't want our depth of field to change. You're gonna change your shutter speed. That's what's gonna give you the different exposure. So to get an overexposed photo, you're gonna go ahead and you're gonna dial in a longer shutter speed, okay, to give you an extra stop. And then you're gonna do that once more. So you at least wanna get 2 stops in there if you're shooting HDR. If you realize this is a really crazy scene with a lot of contrast in it, and you're looking at the overexposed photo and there's still detail in or there's still shadowy areas, then you're gonna have to overexpose even more. I can't tell you exactly what it is, because you gotta look at the screen and see if those shadow areas are bright enough.
Now, it's gonna be better for them to take, even if they don't use them all, better to take a few more and have them.
Absolutely, it's free. So even if you take a photo where the whole entire screen is blinking at you, you're better off with that than having to fix it later on. So now the other way is you want to underexpose the photo, so then you just go the other direction and you start to dial in different shutter speeds to underexpose the photo. And basically what you're looking for is to make sure you capture all the detail that's in those highlight areas, to make sure you capture all that detail. So again, nothing is too bright inside the photo. Okay, so if you don't have a photo, or if you don't have a camera that does auto exposure bracketing, just dial in your settings in aperture priority, then switch over to manual, and you can actually go in there and manually do the same thing.
Now, there were a couple of things that occurred to me. One of them sort of goes, I hope, without saying, but obviously this is going to work a whole lot better if you're on a tripod than trying to change all your settings.
In fact, one of the things I tell people is a lot of times if you have auto exposure bracketing, you can go on continuous shooting mode, and you can fire off 5 or 6 or 7 shots pretty quickly. But if you're doing this manually, it's going to be nearly impossible to handhold and change the shutter speed and do that without getting a really blurry photo.
Right. And the other thing that you've probably given this tip, I'm sure, in the past when you're talking about shooting a pano, but I do the same thing if I'm doing manual bracketing, is do the old finger in front of one and at the end, just to give you something when you've got a whole sea of photos you're looking at. It reminds you this is the set of photos that I specifically shot for my HDR.
Exactly. So whether you're doing HDR or you're just exposure bracketing and you're going to combine them together manually in Photoshop, the key is just to be able to take the different exposures.
Very nice.
Well, Mr. Cross, we have Mr. Zeiser was
David
in
Zer,
the other day.
yes.
So Dave Zeiser, famous wedding photography, was actually in the studio, and we pulled him aside and were able to get some tips out of him. Let's go check it out. Well, I'm here with David Zeiser, world famous wedding photographer and author of Captured by the Light. So welcome, David.
Thanks, Matt. Happy to be here. Going good. Going good.
All right. So David is, as I mentioned earlier, here's a world famous wedding photographer. You're a Photoshop world instructor. In fact, we just got back from there, and you had some tips that you wanted to share with us. So what do you got today?
Well, a couple things is you know, it's interesting. You know, there's so many wedding shooters out there these days, and I think a lot of them love their cameras. They can't wait out there, can't wait to get out there and get running and gunning. But you know what? A lot of us always have that second or even that third camera over our shoulder in a bag or whatever. But you know, with all these new cameras, I always like to say what we hold in our hands is Harry Potter magic. We really do, because back in the old film days, it was an f-stop, a shutter speed, and a focal length of the lens. That was it. Well, literally, we can take an f-stop and a shutter speed and a focal length of the lens, and we can literally tie all that together with just the custom settings on our Canon camera right here. So, you know, I got the Canon 7D right here, and it's got C1, 2, and 3 custom settings that I can basically set up ahead of time when I'm out there shooting. It literally gives me 3 cameras over my shoulder, but guess what? It's only on one strap, which is kind of cool. So what I do when I go out to shoot a wedding, I've got my regular, you know, the regular buttons and knobs that I shoot at every time. But, you know, let's say I'm going to go into, let's say, an available light situation. It's all tungsten mode. The bride's getting ready, whatever. Well, you know what? I don't want to have to switch the color balance here. I don't want to switch the ISO here. I don't want to change to spot metering here and everything. So why not just get all of those all set up exactly the way you want them? ISO, spot metering, whatever else we said along the way too.
White balance.
White balance. Yeah, get all those things all set up. And then what you're going to do is you're just going to press menu on the back of the camera, and then you're going to have camera user setting right here. It's going to say register, and then it's going to say, do you want that to be attributed to C1, 2, or 3? You just punch it in, and then every time you're in that situation, a low light, ambient light situation, and you want to use spot meter reading. Why do I want to use spot meter reading? Because, you know, with these girls, and well, girls or guys, you know, there's the makeup artist's mirror. There's maybe a window in the background, and if you use a center weighted, what happens is that light could be all over the place, and I have had way too many silhouettes when I've done something like that. So spot metering zooms in on
you don't want a silhouette.
No, exactly.
No,
not a good thing. But now just turning it to C1, and guess what? I got my camera, my candid camera right at the wedding.
Very cool tip. So close things up here. You recently authored a book called Captured by the Light, which we have. Congratulations to David. We just found out that that book, it's been out for what, 4 weeks?
4 weeks.
4 weeks, and it's now off for its second printing. So, so pretty cool stuff. But if you haven't checked it out, you can go on to Amazon.com or wherever you buy your books from. It's called Captured by the Light. Lots of good reviews on it. And I think we were talking to Scott about this. You know, Scott kind of said it best. It's a wedding book, and it's kind of becoming the wedding book, but it's also a book on portraits.
You know what, and that's one thing when we were talking earlier too, you know, the book is 11 chapters, you know, 1 through 11, but it's chapters 9, 10, and 11 that have to do specifically with wedding photography. What's cool about chapters 1 through 8, it's about lighting, it's about composition, it's about available light, off-camera flash, on-camera flash. Anything any photographer could ever want to use is really in the first 8 chapters too. And I've had a lot of people email me and say, wow, I just bought it for the lighting, or I just bought it for your exposure technique. So,
well, cool stuff. Hey, thanks for coming on. I know we're going to have you on again here in the very, very near future. But thanks again. We appreciate it.
Happy to be here. Thanks, Matt.
Hey, we are back, and coming up next is one of my favorite segments. Just like Larry, I'm a bit of a cheapskate when it comes to equipment, and I love the cheap shots. So let's take a look at what Larry's got at this time around with another little cheap shots for us.
This week on Cheap Shots, I want to show you something you've probably already seen. This is a GorillaPod. It's a small tripod, and the reason I want to tell you about this, there are so many situations that I find myself in where I wish I had a tripod, but carrying around a full-size tripod just isn't practical. I remember being at Photoshop World in Boston one night, and you can pretty much walk around in Boston with a camera around your neck, but carrying a tripod in downtown Boston, it just doesn't work. And then setting up that tripod, you know, I want to be with friends when I'm setting up a tripod. I don't want to be walking around by myself. So what I did was I took this GorillaPod and I attached my camera. But the secret to making a GorillaPod into a good tripod, an inexpensive ball head. Now this one's from Manfrotto, but that doesn't really matter. Just get an inexpensive ball head and you attach the two together. So once you have them together, the nice thing is now you can mount your camera on here. I have a little quick release plate on the top. So you put this on your camera, and now you can put this on a park bench or mailboxes, tree branches, anything at all, so you can get those shots in low light that you get the tack sharp shots when you're using a tripod. But this is a tripod you can actually carry around in a lot of places, in a lot of situations where you can't carry a full-size tripod. The key, buy an aftermarket small ball head, and that really makes all the difference in the world. That's it for Cheap Shots this week. We'll see you again next time.
All right, beautiful, beautiful. Okay, a little bit closer. Okay, that's it. Work a little bit to the side. Yep, there we go. That's it. Hold it. Time for a close-up. Brad, need tuner F2. Can I get that hair adjusted, please? All right, the hair's looking good. Looking good. All right. That's it. Work the hair. Work the hair. Come on. That's it. Give it to me. There we go. Beautiful. Beautiful. Yes. Work the hair. That. Oh, look at the eye. Give me that. Oh, there you go. Beautiful. Excellent. Hold that pose. There we go. Beautiful.
Well, thank you very much, Larry. And next up, we have what we've all been waiting for, and that is our guest host, Dave Cross. So, Dave, you've got a very cool, and I have the same app, so I'm anxious to see what everybody else's feedback to. But very, very cool stuff.
Yeah, it's the On1 digital SLR remote, and when it first came out, frankly, I thought, oh, that's kind of cool, and I played with it a little bit. But I actually had an opportunity recently to use it, and I got to tell you, it was fantastic because I was all by myself, trying to shoot with a model and get light set up. Instead of running back and forth for the first 10 minutes, I just stood right beside her, took shots and adjusted lights, and was able to actually show her what it looked like. So I'm going to show you the complete setup and a way you can use it when you're all by yourself trying to do a photo shoot without an assistant. So let's head over to the studio and I can show you right now. All right, so we're going to take a look at this really cool piece of software, which is for the iPhone and the iPod Touch from On1 Software. It's called DSLR Remote, as I said, and what it does, it turns your iPhone or iPod Touch into a remote control, but frankly, it's much more than that. So there's a couple of things that we're going to do to set this up. Now, first of all, I should mention I've got Corey Barker sitting in the background there waiting to happily model for me to show you how this all works. But really, you have to do a couple of things. Once you buy the application, which is around $20, you get an email from On1 to download their free server software. So you install that on your laptop, and this is the key. The camera needs to be tethered to the laptop. A lot of people were confused by the fact that this is wireless and this is the phone or the iPod Touches, but the camera still needs to be tethered in directly. So you set that up. That's very easy to do. And the other thing we need to do is create a way where my iPhone or iPod Touch communicates with my laptop. And I do that setting up something called an ad hoc network. And it's very simple to do. It varies between Mac and PC, but it's really just a matter of going to the wireless controls and saying, make kind of a computer-to-computer network, which I've already done on the laptop. And then on my phone here, I just had to go and to my network settings and make sure I'm using the same one, which I am. Then I launch the On1 software, and the first thing that needs to be important come up is it does here, it tells me it recognizes my camera, and I've chosen a location for my photos to appear. And what I've done here, just to make my life simpler, is in Bridge, I have the same folder active, so when I take a photo, it will also show up on my screen here. Once I've done all of that, then I launch the On1 software, and it comes up with this cool little interface, and I can just do a quick test shot right now just by hitting the fire button, and two things will happen. First of all, it'll show me the results on my phone, but it also shows me in Bridge what I've got. So this is how I take advantage of it when I'm doing a shoot all by myself, which frankly happens quite often. I don't have an assistant to move lights around. And what occurred to me recently when I was taking advantage of this was one of the advantages was not only changing the settings, but it was also working with your model to actually be able to show them and say, see how if you put your chin down, if you turn this way. So, for example, here I notice that my settings look a little bit off, it's a little too bright. So I'm just going to change the setting right here and just take another test shot. The model says, I wasn't ready. Well, neither was I really, but this is just a test shot. So what it's letting me do now is go in and say, okay, well, I need to just change one more setting here. These are all just test shots, so I can even be in the photo. Oh, I missed it. So that's getting a better result now, but here's the two things that I really like about this is I don't have to run back and forth. For example, I think I have the wrong white balance here, so I just go to white balance setting and I choose it here, so I don't have to even go near the camera to do that. And same thing goes with ISO. I think I want to put the ISO down a little bit. Take another test shot. Miss it again. That's a little better. But here's the other part I like about it. I can show Corey and say, see how there's a lot of light on this side, so if you turn your face a little that way, not too much, that's pretty good there. And then I can do another quick shot. Take a look at that, that's a little better. And I think I'm gonna see what would happen if I just added a little reflector in here. Again, being a one-man show, I can now do this myself. That's a little better. Put your chin up just a little bit, there we go. All right, so what this does, it lets me interact with my equipment, but also my model. And once I've got this all set up, then here's the next step that I do. And this is the part that never occurred to me until I was playing with this, is that once the phone has served its purpose, which is the app to see what I'm doing, now at this point, when I come back to my camera, it's still tethered. So every shot I take is still tethered into the computer, so I don't have to switch to a different software to do the tethered shooting. That's just part of the package. So for me, it's proven to be a really great way when I'm working by myself to be able to do tripod-based tethered shooting and experiment and take advantage of this. And this is on an iPhone. Imagine it on an iPad. Now that may be a reason to get an iPad. So anyway, that gives you a little bit of information about how the DSLR remote from ON1 works. Now let's throw it over to a quick tip from Moose Peterson.
All right, everybody, we are back once again with Moose Peterson. You don't even want to know what we were just talking about before this.
No.
Not good stuff. Anyway, Moose, wildlife photographer.
Yes,
famous
sir.
wildlife photographer. DLWS landscape workshops, lots of cool stuff. And along those workshops and all that photography, you picked up a lot of good tips.
Tips? Yeah.
Still not on how to get rid of the bugs, but what do you got for us today?
You know, these tips, where they come from, is basically things that we found that messed up for ourselves and trying to fix them.
Yeah.
It's not like we're rocket scientists. It's like we had to screw up to figure them out. Well, here's a real simple one. If you notice the camera body, the D3X here on the 600 has no camera strap. This one here has a camera strap. The tip is not about the different camera straps, but you have to shooting wildlife. This vertical line from this camera strap, and as it sways in the wind, okay, it mimics the exact same thing as grass and predators going through a grass. It will bend like this and sway. And if you have a shy critter, and most of the things we do in wildlife are based on, you know, as a shy critter until you know otherwise, that way you don't scare it off. This little motion, okay, hanging on this big lens on this tripod, walking toward our vision, and their vision is geared towards catching that vertical line.
That's good.
Removing that strap, a lot of times with a shy critter will keep them from moving away. So it's a little thing, and we would totally not think of it because our vision isn't geared like critters, but that vertical line moving, boom, they'll catch it instantly.
Well, everybody thinks you stand really still and everything's motionless, but you don't realize you got that thing swaying.
Now here's the funky thing that always gets me going. So they'll pick up on the strap, right?
Okay.
But this tripod, the body, this body, that doesn't bug them.
No.
This little strap moving is enough to make them work. We've actually tried some experiments with biologists in the field to see if we could figure it out. Why this and not this, don't know. Just the way it is.
Hey, good stuff. All right, so people want to find out more, where should they go?
MoosePeterson.com/blog for the Uber site.
For the Uber site.
Uber site.
Uber site's good. Moose, thanks again for coming by.
Thanks for having me, bud.
All right, see you. Hey, thanks, Moose. And as you know, we always like to give you a little bit of inspiration to check out. A website that I really like is Eric Almas. We'll put the link right on the screen here and also onto the website. But he's got some really cool photography, everything from lifestyle to fashion to portraiture, even landscapes. And he's got a very, very unique style. So you'll definitely want to go check out Eric's work. And also,
yes, well, you know, here it is. I finally was so happy when Matt asked me to co-host, fill in for Scott, and then that's it. That's the end of the season.
It is the end of the season. So we'd mentioned it before, but we're doing seasons here, and it's kind of honestly just to give us a little bit of break, to recharge, and to get some new content together for the next season. We're going to be off for 4 weeks, and I know we've said 4 weeks before, but it's not just the 4 weeks, it turns into the 16 weeks.
Right.
We will be back in 4 weeks. We
Yeah,
don't have to redesign
nothing's
this.
changing,
Yeah.
it's just a break to come up with new ideas. And that, by the way, brings up an interesting point. Your job as viewers is to give some ideas, because we know you all have things you want to learn about, you want to see more, or tips on certain things. Send in your comments and suggestions, and it's going to be a great help to prepare for the next season.
Absolutely, and we will we'll post a couple little things in the break there, so keep an eye on the website. And also, a lot of people don't know that we did an entire first season of this show. All right, there's like 24 episodes, and I watch all the comments on the website, and a lot of people ask about lenses. Well, if you go back to that first season, we did like 4 shows right after, one after another, where we talked nothing but lenses. The lenses that we use, why we use them, where we use them, which ones we use, the whole thing. So if you want to find out more about lenses, we're not necessarily going to do a whole show on it. Go back and watch that first season, and you'll find a lot of info in there.
Very good.
Dave, thank you for being my co-host today.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it. And on behalf of myself and everybody over here at dtown TV, we appreciate it, and we'll see you again soon.
Bye now.
Thank you.